Hi, today I wanted to do a video on Seth Rich. Controversial subject, I know. I wanted to first say this is primarily targeted um, at the non-believer side. I think the believers already believe I don't need to be making a video for them. What I wanted to do was hopefully convince you guys that this is at least shady. I don't, I'm not at the point where I think we should go hang Hillary. I haven't come to that conclusion yet, but it concerns me that people don't think that this is shady. There's so many pieces of this puzzle that don't make sense, and so um, when you see all the mainstream media's essentially telling us not to look into it, that made me want to look into it more. And the more I look into it, the more I doubt the official narrative. So with regard to the which side I'm on, I generally consider myself a moderate. However, the question I'm sure you're all asking is who did I vote for? I did vote for Trump. I'm not ashamed to admit that. However, if it makes a difference, I was a Bernie supporter up to the point where Hillary won the nomination. So with that said, I'm going to get into the details. So big picture, it was a robbery, but nothing was missing. I think that right off the bat should raise red flags. If not that alone, then just wait for the details. So what I'm going to cover primarily with this video is a press conference that included Seth Rich's parents, as well as Jack Berkman, a lawyer representing the Rich family, and Brad Bowman, who is a DNC spokesperson. This took place on November 21st, 2016. 42 seconds in, Jack, the lawyer, and I quote, "I turn to all of you because I can't solve this, and the parents can't solve this, and the police can't solve this. None of us can solve this. Only you can solve this. Because it's only through the media, local, national, international, wherever these people may be, that someone can come forward and tell us what they know. It's only through the media that this can ever be solved." Um, so if the police can't solve this, then why is the mainstream media telling people to stop coming up with conspiracy theories? The lawyer himself, and I'm sure he didn't mean this literally, the lawyer himself, though, said that the police can't solve this, which means we should all be looking into it if you care at all about an American, especially the Democratic side. When you consider he worked for the DNC, that should, I think, give his death more weight. They should care a little bit more. Someone on their side was murdered, and the details surrounding that murder are pretty questionable. Okay, so at 8 minutes and 3 seconds, uh, the father says the following: "We know that he would not have wasted his life if he had seen a gun at the beginning. He would not have risked his life, so he was just trying to defend himself, and then he turned and was shot." And I'll have to double check this. I think that might have been the mother now that I'm reading this. Either way, one of the parents. So one of the parents themselves essentially said this isn't the kind of guy who wouldn't just give his stuff up. If he's the kind of guy who's smart enough to realize that simply giving away, insignificant material possessions would eliminate the risk to his life, then I think he would do it. He seems like a smart guy. Okay. In addition, the robber would also know that brandishing the gun would increase their chances of success. So the mother essentially implies that they weren't showing the gun until the point where he was running away. Um, Now, if we look at this from a reality check perspective, it could just be that they tried to rob him forcefully for the first couple minutes, and he kind of squirmed out of there and started, whatever, and so that's when they pulled the gun. Either way, it doesn't necessarily make sense. Most robbers don't want to kill the person that they're robbing. If they wanted to kill them, they would just kill them and then take the stuff. If the robbers were worried about time, police arriving, um, then as far as why nothing was taken, right? So the it being called a robbery and nothing being taken would imply then that the robbers, were afraid that they were going to get caught or something, so they didn't spend the time to take things from him. Okay, that just doesn't really make sense. Okay, but either way, the parents, knowing Seth, believe strongly that had he known that there was threat, he would have just given up his stuff. He gave up nothing. Nothing was taken from him. Okay? At 9 minutes, and to me this is most concerning. I watched this press conference multiple times, and I noticed that it seemed weird. I didn't think much of it though. Okay, the mother says he used to walk around with a water bottle, and I asked him one time, Seth, why are you buying water bottles? You've got 5 in the hotel already that you haven't drank. Well, every time we go out, if he forgot the water bottle, he'd buy another one. And that was for pure safety. If anybody came up, snuck up, it helped in fighting and stuff. And he finally told me that. Go ahead and go watch the video. That's what she said, okay? And it doesn't make sense. That sentence, grammatically, it doesn't make sense. And so I think she recognizes that, but she isn't necessarily admitting that to herself. That answer that he gave her doesn't make sense. But looking at just the first part, essentially, he's afraid to drink water that he isn't confident is safe to drink. He's unwilling to drink water from the hotel. Um, so he's always got to get his own safe water source. And maybe I'm misinterpreting what she's saying here. To me, though, that's what's going on with that. Okay, let's go down at 12 minutes and 30. This is the lawyer, Jack Berkman. This is a strange crime in that there exists currently no theory of the case. I told you I've been a lawyer for 2.5 decades. Reporter asks a question, there's some stumbling on some words, and there will be in the next part of the quote, for which I'll just say blah blah. But he continues, I don't believe there's much evidence of a robbery. I can tell you that when you first look at the fact pattern, blah blah blah, if you look at it, it doesn't lend itself to any easy explanation. Nothing comes to mind. There's no lawyer's instinct. I don't think there's a detective instinct. There's just no instinct. I gotta say, I got somewhat of an instinct here on what happened. At 14 minutes and 10 seconds, the father says, there were no shell casings. It was a revolver, so you know it wasn't, quote, a professional kind of weapon. And again, I'm not an expert here, but a gun for which you don't have to clean up the crime scene actually sounds like a really smart weapon to use for someone who doesn't want to get caught. Assuming you know you won't have to use more than 6 rounds, because really, and I guess the long range thing too, those are the two main drawbacks of a revolver, right, is their capacity and their range. They're inferior to other guns primarily for those reasons, and if there's gun experts out there, let me know. That's my understanding though. So it's got a shorter range, lower capacity, but if you knew that you're going to be using it for killing someone up close and personal, that wouldn't be a problem, and I think the benefit of not having to pick up shell casings would outweigh any other aspect of it, right? So, and to be honest with you, the father saying that it wasn't a professional kind of weapon, I wonder where he got that from, because as I just explained, if you are a professional, those are probably things you would take into consideration, and that's a completely reasonable decision that a professional might come to use a revolver. So that's also very questionable. At 22:54, and this one's kind of iffy. I'll admit that right off the bat. But a reporter asks a question about the conspiracy theory. It's hard to understand the video that I watched. The reporter questions were very difficult to hear. The audio as a whole was pretty messed up. But the reporter asked a question relating to it, the conspiracy theory aspect of the murder, and the father looks towards Brad as if he may have wanted to let him talk. I think we've all been in a conversation where multiple people are talking, and you know when you're getting a question that someone else should be answering, you might look at them to see if they want to jump in and answer that question. So when essentially what this tells me, and this isn't damning, right? This is common sense. What that tells me is that Brad essentially established his role as the person to handle all conspiracy theory questions. Now, that makes sense given that he's a representative or has connections to, at the very least, the DNC itself. And I'm not sure if this is verified, but I have seen stuff that title him as a crisis PR, you know, PR guy. So, um, uh, again, not damning there, but I don't know. It just seems odd to me that the father's first reaction when a question about it being, the conspiracy theory aspect of it comes up, his first reaction is to let Brad handle it. Um, uh, and so, kind of getting off of the video, I'm going to try to stick to the facts here. I will try to put a disclaimer in when something isn't a fact. I'll try to be very transparent if something is or isn't a fact. Okay? As much as I do support Trump and as much as I don't think that any of the stuff about him is true, um, I do try to remain as close to center as possible. Um, and if you don't believe me, let me just grab this book that's actually really nearby. Rules for Moderates. So, thinking and interacting for positive change. So yeah, I legitimately care about essentially being a reasonable person. I'm sick of the whole far left and the far right. The far right is absolutely disgusting. That's a cesspool, and the far left is so they're no, they're they behave differently, but at the end of the day, they're about equally as stupid. Okay, so just kind of going over some things that I've been mulling over in my head, looking at all the different aspects of this conspiracy theory. One thing that struck me was the large reward that's being offered for information leading to the arrest of the murderers. Okay, $125,000. That's quite a bit of money, and that does not include the money that Julian Assange also put forward. I forget how much that is. I want to say it's something like $20,000. Um, the more time that passes, the less likely, to me at least, it would be that it was some low life, you know, mugger guy, right? Um, Look, if you're if you're robbing people on the streets, you're not a smart guy. That's that's all there is to it. If you were smart, you wouldn't have to resort to stealing stuff from other people. You would just make your living being smart, or at least something that's much lower risk, right? So we know that they're stupid, okay? We know that stupid people can't keep secrets. We know that most people can't keep secrets. So, and especially the fact that there were two suspects tells me that, yeah, statistically, it says that it's twice as likely that that person, one of those people, would tell someone else about it. And I can tell you, again, low-life scum don't care about each other. They don't have loyalty. Um, so I think there's a high probability that they would have told somebody else that they did that. And I think there's a very low probability that those people who were told wouldn't have, given those people up for the reward. That's a lot, upwards. We're looking at about $150,000. Anyone besides those two people who knew that they did it, there's, I mean, 95% chance that they're going to say something. I would say you'd be lucky if 1 in 20 lowlifes would be able to keep that secret in lieu of a $150,000 opportunity. Okay. Also, it happening near his home, and again, reality check. It doesn't have to be, shady, but it happening near his home tells me that uh, whoever those people were likely knew where he lived and they were waiting near his home. Um, Now, is it possible that they followed him from somewhere else? Absolutely. He was walking home from a bar. I don't know that this much detail to get too in depth here. From what I understand, though, it was a long walk. Um, And it was his home was in an affluent neighborhood. That's not fact. I believe it. I haven't verified that personally though. But if he's in an affluent neighborhood, that alone reduces the chance of him getting mugged. If he's in an affluent neighborhood, depending on how far he came from, I don't know why the muggers would wait um, that long, leaving wherever they come from, going into his affluent neighborhood, and then 1 block before he gets home is when they decide to make the move. That just doesn't make sense. So now every question that should always be asked when something, somebody does something, right? A murder, robbery, a lie, whatever it might be, you ask, where's the motivation? Who benefits from this, right? And so the biggest question in the air right now with the whole conspiracy theory is, was Seth Rich in contact with WikiLeaks? Uh, Now, Julian Assange, and I know the media has done their damnedest to ruin any credibility that he has, but I think, and I don't remember the exact numbers, but I've seen a couple of videos where he talks about it. 10 years and 10 million documents, something along those lines, and not once has anyone doubted the credibility of his leaks or just his statements in general. This is an honest guy. Up until the DNC WikiLeaks, the majority of the left liked Julian Assange. So I find it odd that they would approve of this person, trust him, trust his reputation, consider him a credible source, and then, right when, oh boy, now he outs our people, now I don't trust him anymore. Okay, so look, there's really no solid evidence or proof that we shouldn't trust Julian Assange, and he has all but said that it was Seth Rich who gave him the docs. Okay, and looking at it, I'm currently pursuing a degree in cybersecurity. This is something I've heard before that, and during my schooling, the most likely source of a hack or a leak or whatever is somebody in your own organization. That really is, it's the most likely scenario. Edward Snowden. I mean, you know, the NSA spent all their time trying to prevent someone else from getting their stuff, but apparently didn't think to have a mechanism in place to catch somebody who is accessing and storing large amounts of their data. So I don't know, maybe they did have a mechanism and he found his way around that. That's possible. Either way, I would think, even with administrative access, the NSA should have some sort of mechanism in place to prevent, internal leaks, internal leakers. Either way, that's. I don't think too many people would disagree that the biggest threat of a data leak is from the inside, whether that's intentional or not. I mean, the biggest threat of a virus coming onto your network is that idiot that clicks the link in the email. That threat comes from the inside. So Julian Assange basically said it was Seth Rich. Kim.com recently came out, and to be honest with you, I think Kim.com's um, statement actually reduces the likelihood of it having been Seth Rich. I think if he had anything of sustenance, he at least should. I don't know about would, but should release that. Why would he say, um, I've got this evidence, I know he did it, just let me come over there and I'll show you. Um, that's quite the big lie, though. If you were the DNC, if you were Hillary Clinton, if you were anyone who is being blamed for Seth Rich's murder, and you didn't, and you didn't do it, right? If Hillary Clinton didn't do it, if John Podesta, right? If none of them, if they know that they didn't do it, they would be more than happy to invite Kim.com over to show us that evidence. Um, and so I think the response from the DNC, and there likely won't be, because that's a tactic that they very often use. Just ignore it, don't say anything about it, right? If they didn't do it, they should be welcoming him over. They should be trying to. Kim asked for the Mueller guy heading the Russia probe with Donald Trump. Kim asked him to make arrangements so that he can have safe travel to the U.S. without any sort of threat of arrest for his previous alleged crimes. And that's a whole nother story that I'm just starting to look into right now. But anyway, okay, and then So going back to the motivation thing, the biggest, the biggest revelation of the DNC leaks was that Bernie Sanders was cheated out of the nomination. If it is true that he was a Bernie supporter, and I think there is evidence that he was, I'm pretty sure that's an accepted fact that he was a Bernie supporter, that would give him every reason in the world, he's every reason in the world to leak that data to give it to WikiLeaks. I mean, if he was a Bernie supporter, he is a data analyst. I forget exactly what he did. I think he was developing software slash doing data analytics for the DNC. Okay, that tells me that he had access to everything. Okay, so he has access to everything. He stumbles upon evidence that Bernie was cheated out of the nomination, or maybe just working in that environment, he realized, why do these people say Bernie doesn't have a chance? Why are they essentially handing the nomination to Hillary Clinton? This isn't how this is supposed to work, right? So maybe he did some digging, maybe he stumbled, whatever. If he was a Bernie supporter and he found out that the DNC, Hillary, whoever precisely, was essentially stealing the Democratic nomination from Bernie Sanders, of fucking course he would want to give that information to WikiLeaks. I mean, that's obvious, right? So, look, I hope I've stuck to the facts. I hope I didn't misquote anything, and I hope that I'm not crazy, right? Because unless I'm crazy, based on everything that I've said in this video, at the very least, the idea should be considered. And yet, we have mainstream media telling us, nope, conspiracy theory, this is Pizzagate status, you know? Not even. I looked into Pizzagate. I looked into it. You know, were there some shady things about Pizzagate? Sure, but at the end of the day, I never really believed that that was actually happening. I mean, part of me wanted to believe that because then it would take down the Democrats, but I really, there was no hard evidence. It didn't really make sense. Some of the evidence that was used was, it just didn't make sense that it would actually be indicative of some sort of, whatever Pizzagate was implying, right? Um, there's a substantial difference between the shadiness that was Pizzagate and the shadiness that is Seth Rich, okay? There are some serious questions that need answering. There are some serious, serious flaws in the narrative. It just doesn't make sense. I mean, look, and I do think that there's also some circumstantial evidence outside of the water bottle thing that Seth Rich was getting a little bit paranoid towards the end, okay? If he was getting paranoid towards the end, if he was paranoid at all, that right there, I mean, you don't just randomly become paranoid of a robbery. What was he paranoid about? He was working for the DNC. He had access to all of their data. He was paranoid. Oh, and by the way, 10 days after his death is when WikiLeaks started releasing everything. 12 days? 10 or 12 days after his death. That's when WikiLeaks started releasing everything. Look, to be honest with you, if the mainstream media covered this fairly, I wouldn't feel the need to make this video, and I probably wouldn't even be obsessing over it because I would trust that they're handling it. But when they're telling me that there's absolutely no reason to believe it, and I'm a fucking reasonable person, and I absolutely do think that there's reason to believe it. Look, just going over the video alone raises red flags. His parents said he would have given up whatever. He would have just given it up. He doesn't want to have that confrontation, right? If somebody's robbing him, he'll just give it to them. That's essentially his mom, knowing him, believes that he shouldn't have put up a fight. I guess with the gun being if he saw the gun. Which, again, that doesn't make sense either. If you're a robber, if you have a gun, put it to their head. Give me your shit, honky! You know? So that doesn't make sense. The water bottles thing, Look, carrying around a water bottle, it doesn't help protect you. Maybe a frozen water bottle, that might help protect you, but carrying around a water bottle doesn't protect you. Was he afraid of dehydration? Oh, I'm paranoid I'm going to get dehydrated. Yeah. Um, the lawyer himself said this is a strange crime. Let's see here, in that there exists currently no theory of the case. He goes on to say, I don't believe there's much evidence of a robbery. I can tell you that when you first look at the fact pattern, if you look at it, it doesn't lend itself to any easy explanation. Nothing comes to mind. Okay, the father says there's no shell casings. It was a revolver, so you know it wasn't, quote, a professional kind of weapon. To be honest with you, I don't know why he's even making that statement. It wasn't a professional weapon. It's wrong, which tells me that you don't know much about guns. If you don't know much about guns, you wouldn't even be trying to make that statement in the first place. Maybe you think just because the revolver is an older weapon that's gone out of style, maybe you assume that, it's only for poor people or something. I don't know. I don't know why he would. It's reasonable that this, was a legitimate burglary, and then he did make that statement. That's possible, okay, but it's questionable. Um, there's so many things, and don't even get me started on all the other stuff, right? Look, Julian Assange, complete credibility. Said he has all but said it was Seth Rich. The emails from WikiLeaks were released 10 or 12 days after he was murdered. I gotta tell you, this stinks. It stinks. And if you're gonna sit here and tell me it doesn't stink, that's fucking bullshit, okay? It's absolute bullshit. It fucking stinks, alright? It stinks.